We get asked all the time for recipes for the stuff that we catch. Well, here's a bunch of shrimp that we caught on one of our trawling trips, and we're fixing to show you how to cook a no-bake shrimp fettuccine. Now, if you ask me, this is where most other recipes kind of go astray. They've got you cooking shrimp fettuccine, but they've got you adding chicken broth to your recipe. You've got the best broth you could have right here. You just finished peeling your shrimp. This is clean water, and all we're doing is boiling our shrimp shells. And as soon as this boils for just a little while, we'll set this all to the side, and when it comes time to add the stock, there's our stock water. All right, so let's get this thing started. Here we are, a no-bake version of shrimp fettuccine. Here I've got my vegetables, white onions, bell peppers. I like a lot of bell peppers. So we're going to do this. I like celery also, but I don't like the texture of celery. So what I do is I add dehydrated or celery flakes later on as we go. So as we get this thing started, that's fine. We're gonna put a couple of sticks of butter in here and get that butter melting. Then we'll add our vegetables and we'll pick it up from there. So now that our butter is just about melted, it's time to go ahead and add these vegetables. So I'm gonna add my onions and my bell peppers. I'm on a medium-high heat. And we're just going to, I'm sorry about that. We're on a medium-high heat, and we're just going to let them cook down slowly. This isn't like we're doing a jambalaya or anything. We don't want to caramelize them or burn them. We just want to let them get soft and white. And I'll show you what I'm doing with the shrimp here in just a second. So these are our shrimp. I've already peeled them, and I made the stock out of balling the shells. But we want to go ahead and season these just a little bit. We don't want, I like a lot of garlic in my stuff, but we don't want to cook the garlic in here very much because it'll burn it. So what we're going to do is we're going to season the shrimp and give them the opportunity to soak up some of the seasoning. And while they're doing that, we'll finish browning or sauteing the onions. So here we're going to add just a little bit of Cajun seasoning, good old Tony Chachere's. And there you go. There's our shrimp with our Tony Chachere's on it. Now what we're going to do, I like my garlic, so I'm going to add 2 good tablespoons or teaspoons, 2 heaping teaspoons of garlic. And then we're just going to stir these all around, mix that seasoning all in, get them all kind of coated. And then they're going to go back in the refrigerator and wait. They're going to wait their turn. But here, guys, this is good old fresh Gulf shrimp that we caught on one of our trawling trips, actually. These are shrimp that we caught. It's shrimp that you can come catch if you want to come do your little trawling trip. So now that butter's getting hot and the vegetables are in there, you just want to keep stirring them around. You don't have to stir them constantly, but you want to keep moving them around a little bit because you don't want any one of them to sit on the bottom of the pot and burn and become brown or stuck or glaze the bottom of the pot. All we're looking to do is get these vegetables good and soft. Now here's something you may not see in a lot of other recipes. If you can see it on film, I cheated. I added a little bit of extra garlic to the vegetables down here. But in a lot of the other recipes, they use stuff like chicken stock and that type of stuff to help thicken this up and help do it. I like mushrooms. So while these vegetables are softening up, I'm going to add a tub of mushrooms to help soften them up while the vegetables are cooking. Aside from that, you'll see in just a little while, instead of adding a can of cream of chicken to help with the consistency of the sauce, I'm going to go with cream of mushroom. I don't want any chicken whatsoever to take over the flavor of my shrimp. If I was cooking a chicken fettuccine, then I'd use chicken stock. I don't want chicken stock in my seafood, and that's just a difference between this recipe and many others that you see. Alright, so as they continue to cook, this is the celery flakes that I was telling you about. I just don't like when I'm actually eating it, I don't like the consistency of celery. So I use the flakes. It gives you the same flavor, only it doesn't give you those big chunks of celery. So I'm going to add the celery flakes to this now. It looks like it's about halfway done. The vegetables look like they're about halfway through. Oh, I wish you could smell this. It's starting to smell good. Okay, so one of the big differences is now, if you were going to make this a baked version, where you put this in a casserole dish and you bake it. You would cook it the same way I'm cooking it right now, only you'd put it in a casserole dish and you would bake it for 30 minutes or more, or about 30 minutes. But if so, then you want to go ahead and you want to stop your vegetables now. You can see how they're getting a little translucent. This is a no-bake version, so we're gonna serve this directly out of this pot. So we're gonna cook these just a little bit longer and go from there. Now, the difference with the bake versus the no-bake version also is if you want to get creative with different cheeses, if you want to make it kind of an Alfredo taste, if you want to add Parmesan or other cheeses to it, then that's a good time to do the baked version, because you would prepare it basically the same way, but you'd stop right here with your vegetables and you'd go ahead and do the rest of the recipe. And then when you dished it up and got ready to put it in the oven, that's when you would put your Parmesan cheese and everything else on top of it, and then let that bake in as you were baking it. But this is going to be a stovetop version, so we're going to continue to cook them just a little bit longer. All right, so with a life full of children and knowing I'm going to be feeding some kids tomorrow, I like to break my noodles in half. That way they're not so long. They're not there for the kids to make a mess. Plus they lay easier in the pot. So just find you a sharp surface, break them in half, and now it's time to add them to the water. In this recipe, I think I'm going to end up with 2 packages of noodles. Now as those ball, you're going to want to stir them just a little bit every now and then to make sure they don't stick together and come out with a big clump of noodles. So as they're cooking, just with a fork, just stir them every now and then until they're done. Alright, so I got my noodles on and cooking. Now it's time to move to the next step. My vegetables look like they're good and done. So what I've got here is a can of cream of mushroom soup. We're going to take this cream of mushroom soup and add it to the vegetables. Now we're going to take a can of mild rotel. Just regular mild rotel. You could vary your taste if you want to. You could add some of the different mixes they have. But just take a mild can of rotel and add it in. Now we want to stir all this together. So now I've got this handy dandy little strainer that I've had for years. I have no idea where I picked it up from. But now it's time to add the shrimp stock. And you can see this is nothing but boiled shrimp shells. And I'm using the strainer. I'm just pouring it straight in there, but I'm using the strainer to keep the shells themselves from going in. Look, when I cook, unless I'm baking, I never do anything by measurement. I'll try to give you the best estimates I can in the recipe that goes, the actual written recipe that goes with this. Now this can go to feed the cats. Put it in your mulch pile or whatever. That's just leftover cooked shrimp shells. Now it's time to get back to this. Stir it in and let it cook a little while. All right, so my noodles are just about done, and we're going to be taking that off here in just a little while and draining them. But this is almost done too. You can see where, you know, it's kind of cooked down a little bit. It's a little bit watery. It's got some more cooking down to do. Now in this version today, we're going to go with just straight, regular flavored Velveeta. You could use some pepper jack in it. You could use some, you know, whatever your personal taste is. What do they call it? The queso blend. And that type of stuff. If you're going to use the specialty cheeses like the Alfredo or you're going to try to make it an Alfredo flavor with the Parmesan cheese or the mozzarella cheese, that's when I would suggest you turn this into a baked version. And once we do what we've done here, it's very simple. You just put it in a pan and bake it. Your biggest thing is your shrimp. Shrimp's just like any other seafood. You do not want to overcook it. If you overcook it, it's gonna taste like rubber, like you're trying to eat beef jerky. So the shrimp go in absolutely last, and if you're going to bake it, you just stir them in and then put it in the oven to finish off. Here we're going to cook them just a few minutes as we finish up the dish, but you'll see that in a few minutes. Alright, so here's what's next for us. A block of original Velveeta, and this is where your personal taste comes in and you can start changing things. Like I said, you could use the queso blend, the pepper jack, whatever you want. But give us just a minute. We're going to cut this up in little pieces and get it in there and get it to start melting. Just turn the fire down a little bit because all we need this cheese to do is simmer until it melts. All right, so here we go. We're starting to put the cheese in. Good old Velveeta. Now you want to turn your fire down and let it just simmer, because in just a minute we're going to add either your taste again. We're going to add either some heavy whipping cream or some half and half to this, just to help it be creamy. So you don't, once you add the dairy product, you don't want it to sit there and ball. Simmer's okay, but you don't want it to sit there and ball and scorch. You do need to stir this every now and then just to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot. All right, now the cheese is mostly melted, so it's time to start your seasoning. And look, this is all personal taste. I'm gonna do a little black pepper. I'm gonna help it out with a little Tony Chachere's or a Creole seasoning of your choice. Maybe a lot of Tony Chachere's. I'm not adding any salt because the shrimp have salt in them and Tony Chachere's has salt in them. And then we're gonna go add some parsley flakes, some good old parsley to it. And you can top it off with some more parsley later just to make it look pretty. But then now it's time to just kind of dig into the cabinet and see what we got left that we want to put in it. As we explore what's left in the cabinet, we'll bring you back to the scene as we decide what we're going to put in it. So now you can see, I mean, we really didn't add anything else. I put a little bit more celery flake in it, and I'm going strictly by smell. But you can see how it's gotten really good and thick. So right about now, it's time to add the half and half. And then let it just simmer for just a little while and thicken back up, and then we'll add the noodles, followed by the shrimp. Now this is a pint of half and half. We're going to add a little bit to it. I'm not going to add the whole pint simply because I'm watching the consistency. And I don't want to have to cook this a whole lot longer to where it you know, just makes it a longer ordeal. Once I put the noodles in there, they're going to soak up a lot of this liquid. And once I let it cool down, it's going to thicken up because of the cheese. But I don't want to have to sit here and cook it for 2-3 hours just to get the consistency right. So that's probably about half of that tub, a half and half. And there again, I don't cook by measurements, I cook by sight. So we've let it simmer down now off camera for about 15 minutes or so. We're going to slowly start folding these noodles in. And you want to add them in and fold them up real good so that everything gets mixed in really good. The mushrooms, the seasoning, and everything else. Just a little bit at a time and fold them in. And you got to remember, as it continues to cook, just a little bit, these noodles will actually start soaking up some of that flavor or some of the liquid, which will thicken it up even more. So we just continue to fold them in, and you don't want to get the pot too full just yet. So you see we've gotten maybe half the noodles in. Remember, shrimp don't take a long time to cook. So now it's time to start adding our shrimp in. Put the shrimp in with about half the noodles in, and then we're going to fold this in to everything. Oh, look, got one of them right there. It's wanting to stay. So now we're going to, I'm sorry, I'm kicking the camera again. So we're going to continue to fold this in. And as those shrimp start getting mixed up in there a little bit, then we'll fold in the rest of the noodles. Boy, is that not looking good or what? And as it sits here and simmers for the next 30 minutes or so, just on a little bit of heat, those shrimp will turn pink and be cooked. They won't be overcooked, they'll be cooked. And they're going to impart even more of that shrimp flavor from that shrimp stock that we did. So we've got a Christmas parade tomorrow, and we're expecting some company. Otherwise, I'd have done this recipe about in half. But as of right now, she looks like she's ready to cook just a little bit longer until them shrimp are ready. So I'm going to let her sit here and simmer until the shrimp all turn pink. You can see this one here right here was against the side of the pot. He's already turning pink. That shrimp's already about half cooked. So as it continues, the rest of them will cook, and we'll be back shortly to finish it up. All right, so as my battery runs out, we're done. You can see the shrimp are all nice and pink. It sat here and cooked for about 15 minutes on just a medium low. I'm fixing to go do some more honeydews and paint on the house a little bit more, and I'm gonna put a lid on this and put it on the smallest burner I got and put it on low, and in 2 or 3 hours they'll be here to eat it. I will get you a picture of the finished plate, and we'll talk about it a little bit more after that. But there you can see it's done. It's ready to go, and as it cools, it'll thicken up a whole lot.